It was a crisp autumn afternoon on the Harvard University campus, the kind where golden leaves danced like ancient secrets on cobblestone paths, and the buildings stood like grand old thinkers bathed in warm light. Students buzzed between lectures, some sipping overpriced coffee, others buried in books they pretended to understand. But in one grand lecture hall of sandstone and oak, something was about to happen that no textbook could ever predict. Professor Adrian Bellamy, the esteemed and ever so arrogant scholar of philosophy, stood at the front of his packed lecture hall. He was a tall, sharply dressed man in his mid-50s, known for his biting wit and a mind sharper than most razors. He had a reputation for public intellectual takedowns and a particular flair for humiliating anyone who dared question him today. He was giving one of his famous open lectures events, attended not just by students but by visitors from the public, alumni, and academics alike. The lecture topic was The Paradox of Wisdom: Why Age Does Not Equal Intelligence. He began with his signature smirk. Today, we examine whether wisdom truly comes with age, or whether it simply gets old and slow. The room laughed. He thrived on the applause, the admiration, the way people leaned forward to catch his every word. His ego filled the room before his voice did. As he paced between rows of young students, his eyes fell on an elderly woman sitting quietly in the second row. She wore a faded lavender coat, sensible black shoes, and her snow-white hair was pulled into a soft bun. Her hands were folded in her lap. She didn't carry a notebook or laptop, only a small brown leather purse. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. Professor Bellamy raised an eyebrow. "We're honored to have someone of such advanced years join us today," he said with a mocking tone, drawing soft laughter from the crowd. Perhaps she came to reminisce about Plato, or maybe she knew him personally. The students laughed louder now. Even a few colleagues smirked. But the old woman simply smiled politely. Encouraged, Bellamy continued, "Ma'am, if I may tell me, do you believe that age equals wisdom?" She tilted her head. "Not always, but neither does a title equal intelligence." The room hushed. A few students stifled grins. Bellamy chuckled. "Touché. May I ask your name?" "My name is Eleanor Winslow," she replied. "I used to be a teacher." "Ah," Bellamy said, enjoying the game. "And what did you teach?" "Knitting." "Home?" "Economics." Eleanor smiled again, kindly but unwavering. "Quantum mechanics." "And comparative philosophy." The room blinked. Bellamy's expression faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered. "Impressive. And where, may I ask?" Eleanor said softly. "Oxford, and then at the Sorbonne, before MIT recruited me to write on the intersection of metaphysics and particle theory. I retired some 20 years ago, though it seems my work is still cited in some of your own publications, Professor Bellamy." The room froze. Professor Bellamy's face changed. He cleared his throat. "Your name?" "Eleanor Winslow." "Winslow's paradox. That's you." Eleanor nodded gently. Winslow's paradox was a major philosophical riddle combining string theory and classical ethics. It was considered unsolvable until a series of essays in the 1970s cracked it open, essays signed by E. Winslow for decades. Students had read those essays, including Bellamy himself. The silence in the room was now heavier than the air before a thunderstorm. Eleanor looked around, not with pride, but with peace. "I came today not to be recognized. I enjoy learning, even from those younger than me. I believe wisdom listens more than it speaks." Bellamy swallowed hard, Eleanor continued. "But since we are discussing paradoxes today, perhaps the greater paradox is how some believe knowledge is owned, not shared. That speaking louder makes one right. Or that youth equals innovation, and age equals decay." She stood, slowly but with dignity. "I may be old, Professor Bellamy, but I remember when you were still trying to spell epistemology correctly in your first journal submissions." The audience couldn't hold back. Laughter erupted, not cruel, but joyous, reveling in the unexpected turn. A few students stood, clapping softly at first. Then more joined. Within moments, the whole hall echoed with applause. Professor Bellamy stood frozen. Eleanor, ever composed, gave a soft nod and turned to leave. But before she could step away, a student raised a hand. "Dr. Winslow, would you stay and maybe speak with us about your work?" The old woman looked at them, her eyes suddenly glassy with emotion. "If you are willing to listen," she said, "then I would be honored." And so, a chalkboard was pulled back, and a conversation began not about pride, but about curiosity, not about reputation, but about meaning. Eleanor Winslow stood where arrogance once ruled, and in her gentle voice, she offered a glimpse into the kind of genius that does not shout at whispers and still transforms lives. As for Professor Bellamy, he sat down in the front row, eyes wide, notebook open, and for once in his life, he listened.